Welcome councillors, officers and members of the public to the Governance Committee. Reminder, please switch off your mobile phones. There are members of the public and press, well, not press, but attending this meeting virtually along with our auditors. Can I please ask that those attending virtually, please switch off your microphones to avoid any disruption during the meeting. This meeting is to be recorded and will be available in due course on the Council's YouTube channel. And to ensure those attending virtually can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember that this is a formal meeting and therefore please do not refer to each other by first names. Please be aware that contents displayed on your iPad or laptop may be seen by others or members of the public attending. Therefore, please close down your screens which are displaying confidential information during the public part of the meeting. So we'll go into item number 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from councillors Dawson and Tops.
Brilliant. And Orange, I assume.
Orange, sorry, yes.
Choose approve as a correct record of the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. Do I have a proposer for that? So Howard Booth, seconder, Councillor Quinn. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? So items brought forward in which, well, I brought forward to the chair. John said that it might be a good idea that we introduce the Devon Assurance Partnership members to the newer members of the committee. So I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourself and give a brief background about what you do.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm Jo McCormick. I'm the interim head of Devon Assurance Partnership. I previously was the deputy head, technically not the interim until the 1st of July. So if you've heard Tony Rose before, and I know he's been along to committees in the past, he is leaving DAP at the end of the month, and I'm going to be the interim head of the partnership for the rest of this financial year. So that's really good because it ensures that continuity and that stability across the partnership is really important. In terms of a permanent position for the head of DAP, then that decision is taken by the management board that we feed into, which will be a decision they're going to be taking as the year progresses. So we will update on that as we know more. So with us today, we have some new faces here with us today in the room and online. So I'll go to in the room to begin with. So Lee Elson is assurance manager within Devon Assurance Partnership. So Lee, how long have you been with DAP now?
It should be 5 years this November. Yeah.
So previously a senior assurance officer, mainly working on Devon County Council's audit work, recent promotion to assurance manager, and he's going to be looking after North Devon in terms of the audit work, along with Torridge and Mid Devon. Obviously, you've been previously managed by Darren Roberts, who's been holding the reins for not quite a year, but nearly a year. So we've had a bit of a reshuffle in terms of responsibilities across the management team. Darren's experience as well as internal audit is IT audit, also been through LGR at 2 other authorities in the past as well. So we're going to be utilising Darren's expertise across the IT space for all our clients and also for LGR and some other management responsibilities that we have. So you probably will see Darren again in the future in terms of his work in IT and obviously for LGR, because he's going to be doing some LGR work across all our clients as that moves forward. And we do have time in the plans for LGR as well. So in terms of introductions on screen, we have Rachel. Rachel is our counter fraud and error manager. So previously Rachel worked for Torbay Authority, and what we've done over the last, well, I'm not sure how long it's been now, Rachel, maybe coming up to sort of 10 months, we've been working with Torbay and joining forces with the counter fraud team. So the counter fraud team from Torbay joining up with DAP It's not quite in place in terms of being official, but it's a secondment basis at the moment, and we hope that's just rubber stamping through the HR process over the next few months. But it's a great joining up of forces in terms of DAP's counter-fraud offer with Torbay, more bodies in order to provide the counter-fraud support across all our clients across Devon. Okay, introductions from DAP, hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Declarations of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Any? Brilliant. To agree the agenda between Part A and Part B, we do have a Part B, so when that happens, obviously members of the public will have to. Agenda item 6, external audit progress report.
That one up, Chair, if that's okay. So Bishop Fleming, who you recommend auditors, would normally be here to attend. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it this evening. In terms of external audit update, there isn't really too much to update on since they last gave you an update. At your last meeting, you had the external audit planned for 26-27. That would have set out the arrangements for the audit of the financial statements for 25-26 year. Those financial statements I will give an update on under item 14 in terms of where we are in terms of progress. But in terms of the external audit of those accounts, they will take place through July and August. So the audit is booked in with Bishop Fleming to take place. The plan is that external audit take place through the summer months with a draft report due for September. So they're aiming to bring their draft audit findings report to your meeting in September. That's before the official sign-off date, but they're planning to try and do North Devon as early as possible. Last year you received that in November, but the aim this year is to try and get it to you for September. So everything is on track to meet that. The financial statements I'll update on shortly, but they will be produced in the next couple of weeks. So that will tie in then so that the auditors will have a set of draft statements signed off with the appropriate disclosure notes and working papers for them to carry out their audit work. That audit work will take place with the finance team and also the valuers to make sure that they can get assurance over the work that's been included within those accounts. And as I said, they will report back to your September meeting where they will attend and report their findings. If that goes to plan, then the plan would then be to take the final set of accounts to the full council meeting in September, where members will be asked then to sign off formally the set of accounts and the letter of representation that goes back to the external auditors. So everything is on track for that audit. There's no potential blockages in that road. At the moment, the audit team are all primed, ready to come in, and the finance team are similar, working on the working papers to make sure they're all ready for the auditors for the July start. Happy to take any questions, Chair, if there are any there.
Any questions on that? We'll just move on then. So appointments to government hearing panels, that's for the senior monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the Good Governance Committee must appoint hearing panels to enable it to discharge its standards functions effectively. So this includes determining code of conduct complaints and any associated appeals. As the committee is, along with my role, responsible for handling complaints and imposing sanctions following code of conduct complaints. The use of smaller politically balanced panels is necessary to provide a fair, impartial and practical forum for quasi-judicial hearings to take place. So that's the purpose for the appointments that have been recommended on the agenda today.
Chair,
I don't think we've had this before, have we? Have we had them before?
Chair, yes. I mean, we've appointed previously to.
Elect ever been on one?
Nor do I.
I believe you were, but we would have done this previously, and but yes, I mean, yeah, there's obviously highlights that perhaps we need to do more training in the process just because because clearly if you weren't aware where you were even on it, but then the fact is thankfully we haven't had a code of conduct complaint that's had to go that far, so it hasn't come up really, but yeah.
Thank you.
I only have one question. You said politically balanced, but on hearing panel C, it's all people from one political group. I don't know if.
Yeah, so I've actually said politically balanced, but I'm not actually sure if it necessarily needs to be, Chair. Thinking about it, sorry, I might have got that slightly wrong. Sorry, John.
I think Chair, the allocation to the hearing panels is based on sort of experience, and 'cause obviously there may be new members that have joined. So rather, what we wouldn't do is put 3 newly elected members onto one hearing panel, because obviously we want to make sure there's a balance of experience and exposure. So my understanding, that's the rationale that we allocate to the hearing panels. And as Simon has pointed out, obviously the good thing is we haven't had to use these in the past, and hopefully you won't be called upon to be using them in the future, but they are there just to make sure that we're safeguarded. But yeah, it's based on sort of an allocation of it.
Any other questions on this at all? You have to vote on this. So can I have a proposer? Councillor Bushell and a seconder. Councillor Lane. All those in favour? It's unanimous. That's brilliant. Item number 8, the internal audit report. That's from Darren from Devon Assurance Partnership.
I'm just going to introduce Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Over to Darren. Okay, so this agenda item is our annual audit report that we bring to the committee. So as always at this time of year, then we present to you our findings from the year in totality and bring together that in an audit report as an annual summary. Just a bit of an introduction, you'll see on page 18, there's expectations of the committee there in terms of what to consider as part of this report. If you move on to page 19, you can see that the overall opinion that we're giving is reasonable assurance. So just in terms of how that opinion is formed, it is based on work that we have done across the period, within 25-26, but also from previous years' outcomes as well. If you move on to page 21, then you'll see the high-level summaries in terms of the work we have done over that period. And I will pass to Darren, who will give a bit more detail on the detail of the work we've done.
Sure. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so if we refer to page 21 with regards to the high-level summary of the outcomes, particularly with regards to those that are in progress. I'm pleased to report, Chair, that a lot of these are due to be concluded. So that includes the main accounting system, payroll, income generation, VAT, waste management, leisure services, the Tarka Centre, town centre management, and safeguarding. I think, to be honest, we needed a couple more weeks, and we could have actually seen what the assurance levels are on those. As you may remember, there were concerns raised back in the January committee with regards to the viability for delivery of the plan, and I think at this point, I think it'd be good to pay tribute to the team who've really worked really hard to make sure that everything within the plan is there and has been started in preparation for this committee today. And then going forward, we've actually started elements as well of the 26-27 plan. The technology assurance framework review has been commenced with the head of IT here. Now, that one is a non-assurance review, but we are due to actually report that with the head of IT to yourselves at the September audit committee on the basis of it being a framework review. So that will give you a really good understanding of members of, as I would say, what makes technology tick here. And that may be a good case, I think, for perhaps moving forward with some cybersecurity risk training as well. As I said, we are looking to finish off those additional reports. And as I said, that's going to leave the overall outcomes in a very favourable way. And certainly from the outset, if you move on to the pie chart on 24, you can quite clearly see from that that's pretty unanimous, really, in the fact that we'll be looking at reasonable assurances. And from the work that's been going on so far, I don't believe that there's anything in there that's going to upset that assurance opinion going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions from there.
Chairs, could I'm I'm a member of the climate action team, and I want to just talk about page 29. It's about the carbon, environment and biodiversity plan that we have as a council, and it's not fully aligned with the corporate plan, and that's why there's only a reasonable assurance assessment. Could you perhaps say a little more about that, please? I'd like to understand it better.
No problem. So the issue that we had there was that the corporate plan was setting targets that gave the impression that the CEB plan then would go ahead and need to be costed. The trouble was there was many things in the CEB plan that couldn't be costed, such as the electrification of the waste fleet. As the waste manager was informing us, we haven't even got that technology available to us yet it's sat there in the corporate plan saying we need this costed, but the CEB plan is not saying that. What you're saying is that it just needs to be a little bit more realistic with regards to what's actually realistic in the CEB plan, pointing back to physically what's in the corporate plan, because absolutely the overall objective would be the electrification of the fleet. But if the technology just simply isn't there at the moment, then we can't expect the CEB plan to give reasonable costings on that at this time.
I think the other examples you could put out, apart from the electrification of the waste and recycling fleet.
That was the specific one that we picked up on.
Is the specific one, yes.
Yeah.
I understand that. That makes complete sense. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? John?
With some further context as well. So this also gets picked up by the external auditors when they're looking at our value for money and our financial sustainability. They also touch on in their reporting around that we haven't got a fully costed plan. Some councils will set an amount aside and some will put 5 million, 10 million, 20 million in their capital programme and say, here's an amount we're committing for reducing our carbon usage. But then they're committing borrowing against that, and there may not be deliverabilities in terms of when those things may come forwards. So the approach that we've taken, and we've always spoken with both internal audit and external audit about, is that they will come forwards business case by business case, because it's important we look at the rationale behind each one. Such as yesterday at Strategy and Resources, we spoke about solar panels going onto green lanes and putting those on the top deck, and also reducing the lighting usage by putting LED lighting in. But we needed to make sure we see a business case that sits behind that, i.e. what's the upfront costs, what's the reduction in energy usage, what's the savings that will then go through to the retailers in the shopping centre. And it's important that members see that prior to then committing the capital expenditure from the council's budget. So we feel that is a safer and more robust method, rather than having a fully costed plan and committing borrowing against that at a time when we don't necessarily know when those schemes may come forwards. So it's just striking that balance really to make sure that we're achieving that corporate priority, but also one of our other corporate priorities around financial sustainability, and it's important we address that corporate priority at the same time. So it's just striking that balance. There'll always be those competing aspects with the priorities the council sets.
It's very helpful. Thank you, Sean.
I mean, I'm just really pleased to see that we've got a lot of reasonable and substantial assurance. Apart from the crematorium, I don't know if you want to expand on it. That's the only limited assurance we've got so far.
Yeah, I believe, Chair, that was covered in our previous meeting, and I believe that internally within the senior leadership team, I think that's being addressed.
Yeah, I can just pick up on that one, Chair. So yes, it was at your March meeting, so you saw a bit more detail on the crematorium report in that one. There were 4 recommendations in there, three medium recommendations and 1 high recommendation. The high recommendation, which is obviously why then the report no doubt had a limited assurance against it. And that relates to reviewing, it's not to do with the operation of the crematorium, it's to do with reviewing the partnership agreement that's in place, the joint committee arrangements that's in place. So that was established in 1974 when the district council was formed, and a joint arrangement was drafted then in 1974. We couldn't see any evidence since 74, and I've been a long time, and I haven't been from that time, that agreement has been reviewed. So obviously quite rightly we should review that, and the recommendation in the report was that that's reviewed annually to make sure that the arrangement in place still meets the requirements of both parties. So the recommendation that was in there was around the joint agreement needed to be reviewed by the legal teams across both North Devon and Torres District Councils, working with the crematorium committee and management to review that. So I'm pleased to inform you that piece of work has been carried out. So Simon and the legal team have reviewed that joint arrangement agreement in conjunction with myself and Adam. We've made some suggested changes. That's been sent across to Simon's counterpart at Forest Council to be reviewed, with the name then that we would bring those changes back and update that within the Constitution. At the moment, the Constitution has the joint agreement in it. So we will review those functions and make some suggested changes to the Constitution. That will come back to this committee probably in September. Yeah. That recommendation hopefully then has been addressed with the suggestions in the medium recommendations as well, around reporting for both financial and non-financial items, also around the service resumption plan, and also around training for members. So we've picked up all of the recommendations and accepted them, and all 4 recommendations we feel have now been actioned. Joe and the team will obviously pick that up as part of the follow-up audit when that's looked at again through 26-27. So then hopefully next time it's audited, we'll be reporting that hopefully it's no longer a limited assurance and will be coming forwards with an improved assurance rating for you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions from me. Could you possibly just give a bit of background as to why contract and commissioning was not looked at in the year and it's been deferred? Is there a...
Yeah, sure. So that was originally a piece of work that was put forward for the previous year. Now, the plan on that one was that contracts and commissioning would be covered as part of this. As you probably are aware, we do a 4-year audit cycle. We're currently in our 3rd year. Now, that was to be in our 2nd year. We had some issues with regards to getting that kind of delivered on time. Now, the 3rd year was then looking at those individual contracts and commissioning, kind of follow that up. Now, myself and the head of governance have discussed that, and at the moment we feel that that's the more reasonable way to approach that. So therefore, we're going to be re-looking at contracts and commissioning, probably at a more appropriate time around the LGR side of things. So hence that's been moved on for this year. But certainly, I mean, we just talked about the crematorium's joint arrangements. So that gives you an indication of the kind of individual and quite specific contract and joint arrangement work that we did this year, which would have followed that one up. But as I said, I think given the fact we've got LGR next year, I think it would be far more appropriate to have a look at that fresh again next year.
That's reasonable to me. The bright blue one, artificial intelligence, opportunity and non-opinion. What is that work about?
So that wasn't the problem with that is that in effect there is no way of working around artificial intelligence here at North Devon. So that's literally advisory work that we can work with IT here. So that could be, say, for instance, the formulation of policy. AI is moving really quickly from generative AI into agentic AI. And of course, there's the old chestnut as well. Is it AI or is it just simply automation to improve that front end customer experience? So that's basically where that's at. It's the pull really that North Devon can pull back from us with regards to any advice on that. But to turn around and just do an audit of AI at a specific time wouldn't really have much value due to the pace that it's moving, not just globally, but within the public sector as well. So.
Yeah. And sorry, my final question is more, Joe, you touched on this when you introduced it, but you've obviously given an assurance rating of reasonable. Obviously, the plan's moved on phenomenally quick from our last meeting and most of it's been delivered, which is commendable. I was just wondering if you could just give a little bit more background as to how you formed that decision based on the fact that at the time it was formed, only half the plan had been delivered. What other work sort of takes place behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see?
Yeah, most definitely. So in terms of our opinion that we give, and it is an annual opinion that you do get each year at this time of year, So it is more than just that work we've done in that year, because obviously we've been the internal auditors for some time. We build up the knowledge, the awareness of your procedures, etc. So therefore, the opinion that we're giving, whilst we're looking at the work we've done in year, there's also previous knowledge that we've got on the systems and processes that are in place here at North Devon. So it is looking at those completed audits over the period and the previous year. So coverage of the key risk areas that were in the plan. So in the opinion is given based on sort of the key risks that we've been looking at. So in terms of an audit plan, it's always going to be aligned to risk. So we're looking at those key areas and making sure we're covering those. If applicable, and it hasn't been the case for North Devon, we would include, in our opinion, in terms of any follow-up work, touched on follow-up work for crematorium. So next time round, we'll be bringing that into our opinion in terms of the follow-up work. There was no limited reviews from the previous year. In terms of sort of other assurances that are available that sort of come into our opinion, and these are where applicable really. So obviously we keep up to date with what's going on within your external audit arena and how that is going in terms of the accounts. So they're sort of something that we're taking into account. In terms of your action tracking that's being done here, whilst we don't do action tracking for North Devon, we do keep up to date in terms of how they're moving forward, which is obviously something that we're looking at. It's also the professional judgment of the head internal audit that we're taking into account when we're forming our opinion, whether the audit evidence that we've obtained within the year and previous is sufficient and reliable in order to give the outcomes that we can give as part of our work. Were there any limitations in coverage? If they're significant, then obviously that could hinder in terms of giving that opinion. I would say overall, whilst there's things that we are still finishing up, they're at a sort of point where we can see the field work and we're confident with the assurance opinions coming through at that reasonable level. The control environment culture that you have at North Devon, obviously being the internal auditors for some time, then we do get to build that up in terms of stability within the workforce, etc., and that culture that runs through from the senior leadership team. And any emerging risks or known weaknesses that we've not yet audited, we may bring into account. And obviously then it's the extent of the audit plan and how we've been able to deliver that over the last couple of years. So it's just really to sort of confirm that it's not just solely based on the work done in year. There's lots of different factors that we do take into account when building that opinion. Is that helpful?
It is actually, and I have to apologise. You may have hinted at some of that in the report, but I think what you've said, it's so much bigger than what your report is telling us. And maybe in your role as interim, you could maybe enhance this and actually explain all the other bits you're doing behind the scenes that we don't see, because there is an awful lot.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point in terms of doing this day in and day out, sort of having those comments coming back from committees is really useful. And what we're trying to do moving forward is the value added element of our report we will build on, because there is lots we're doing behind the scenes in terms of the advice, the support that we provide, which therefore probably isn't easily demonstrated within our report. So the value added section is something that we do want to develop and grow. So hopefully you'll see that moving forward. Thank you.
Anything else on this, or move on to agenda item 9? So back to Devon Joint Partnership for the internal audit charge and practice.
Thank you, Chair. So I wasn't at your last meeting. Darren Roberts was presenting there, but we did bring the charter and strategy to that meeting. There were some really useful questions that came forward on that, so thank you. We have taken those points on board, and we've made a few slight amendments to the charter and strategy just to ensure we were explicit in everything that was within that. So today we bring that back for agreement at the committee. So I don't know if there's any questions on the charter and strategy that you may have for us.
I just want to say thank you. And I did obviously then go and have a look, and all of the changes we discussed at the last meeting were put in place, and it reads a lot easier as a public sector in person. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for your comments. So much appreciated.
This was just to note.
It's just for we need to note it, yeah.
Formally noting it now.
The minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought we so can I have a proposer and a seconder for noting? Councillor Howard Booth and Councillor Loughborough. And that's it, is it?
All those in favour?
All those in favour? Cool, unanimous.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's a bit confusing. That was.
I think that would have also been for item 8 as well, should have. That happened for item 8.
No.
Let's do that as well.
Sorry, my apologies. It's my first day on the job.
I don't think we can go back to it now, though, can we? Because we went past it in the agenda, John.
Well, I think for noting, you don't normally need to vote. It's only if you're approving something. So it is just to formally, you just need to formally note it. So obviously as a committee, you just need to make sure you're formally noting it procedurally.
My apologies.
You only vote when you're approving something. That's right. We're all learning, Jeff.
Is the monitoring officer going to say we're allowed to go back to that item, or?
I don't think so, Chair. I don't think we need to. So I don't believe that there is a particular requirement to vote when it's just a note. But yeah, it is. Yeah, I see. Yeah, sorry.
If you raise your hand in future, Councillor, that'd be very nice.
Every time I wind you up.
No, every time you want to speak. So we're going to go to the internal audit counter fraud and resilience assessment report. So that's with Rachel online.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the Council's annual counter fraud resilience assessment, outlining the current position, the key risks and the strengths of the arrangements that are in place. So overall, the assurance is positive. The Council is compliant with almost all recognised best practice standards, and North Devon District Council's counter fraud framework continues to strengthen and mature. Importantly, this conclusion is not subjective. It is based on structured assessment, and that assessment took place against the CIPFA and CIFAS Good Practice Framework, as detailed in Appendix 1. This also sets out what is expected of a well-governed local authority. So for context, or a little bit of context, nationally, fraud continues to grow in both scale and sophistication. As we move through service delivery digitally, the use of AI and synthetic identities, and organised and remote criminal activity. And those estimates, or notional estimates, put losses to the public sector at 55 to 81 billion pounds every year. And then alongside that, the government introduced the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. And what that act did is introduce a new failure to prevent fraud corporate offence that came into place in September last year. And the key implication from that is that North Devon District Council must be able to demonstrate that it's got robust and proportionate and well-evidenced fraud prevention arrangements in place, which of course this report does support. So Appendix 1 provides the detailed benchmarking, and that is against 38 best practice expectations, and it's where the committee can take most assurance. I will just highlight a few of the key areas, and the first is around the risk management and governance. So the Council has a dedicated counter-fraud risk register at departmental level, which is highlighted under Expectation 1. And it is an area of strong practice. Fraud risk is also embedded into the wider corporate risk framework, if you see expectation number 8. And these demonstrate that fraud is being treated as a strategic risk and not just an operational issue. The second is around strategy and policy framework. Under Expectation 6, the Council does have a robust anti-fraud and bribery and corruption strategy and policy, which is regularly reviewed and updated. So it has a zero tolerance approach confirmed under Expectation 27. So this provides a strong and consistent control environment and sets the tone from the top of the organisation. In the area of Audit Committee and Governance Oversight, the committee's role is recognised in Expectation 3, which confirms that annual reporting is in place, and Expectation 5, highlighting the committee's role in supporting and challenging any counter-fraud activity. And that reinforces the importance of your ongoing oversight and scrutiny. So moving on into prevention, detection and proactive work, the Council is actively engaged in proactive counter-fraud activity, evidence under expectation number 28. And participation in the National Fraud Initiative is also confirmed under expectations 30 to 32. And these show that the Council isn't just responding to fraud, but it's actually actively seeking to prevent and detect it. And then we look at the culture, the subject of culture, the training and awareness. So expectations 15 and 37 do highlight that a programme of fraud awareness and training is provided and supported by DAP. Whistleblowing arrangements under expectation 16 are in place and they are independently supported. So both of these are critical in building that strong anti-fraud culture across the organisation. Then, as referenced in expectation 33 to 35, the Council meets those requirements by having access to the specialist expertise through its arrangements with the Devon Assurance Partnership, who employ accredited counter-fraud specialists and also have access to those technical experts. This ensures that any investigations and preventative work are professionally delivered and are proportionate. So while the overall position is strong, Appendix 1 also highlights areas for ongoing focus. Now, that is important in fraud. As I've previously mentioned, fraud continues to grow both in scale and its sophistication. And that's why in expectation 2, it notes that work is continuing to enhance fraud risk assessments and that horizon scanning. Expanding into data analytics and proactive work under expectation 31, such as the Council's single person discount review. And then it's to ensure that resources remain aligned to the level of risk, which is again mentioned in expectation 18. And then in meeting expectation 37 and further embedding training and awareness across its services, that takes place with options being explored to obtain an online platform. So it should be noted that all of these are important improvement opportunities. They are not significant weaknesses. So as a committee, you are asked to note that positive assurance that is provided and continue to challenge on proportionality and effectiveness and support the ongoing development of counter-fraud resilience, because your oversight is a key control in itself, particularly under the new legislative requirements. So in conclusion, the Council does have a robust and well-governed and improving counter-fraud framework supported by strong benchmarking against national best practice. However, the fraud risk continues to evolve rapidly, and maintaining this position will require ongoing vigilance, investment and organisational commitment. So this report does demonstrate that the Council is well placed, but also must continue to adapt. So thank you. And are there any questions?
Any questions at all?
Really comprehensive, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's just a note. So, and then item 11, exceptions to contract procedure rules. That's from the senior monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. So just for new council to this committee, the purpose of this comes here is because in the contract procedure rules in Part 4 of the Constitution, where Strategy and Resources Committee, full council, or the chief executive under urgent powers waives the requirement to procure in the contract procedure rules, the matters brought here for a just to check over really. So in this case, it was an urgent decision was sought to waive contract procedure rules and award a contract with a value of £91,945 to the existing provider Freedom Community Alliance for rough sleeper flexible accommodation, as the current contract ended on the 31st of March 2026 and there was insufficient time to re-procure. It is understood that the contract is reliant on external funding, and confirmation of this was not provided until late in the day. The contract should otherwise have been procured under the light touch tendering regime within the Procurement Act. 2023. The report sets out that without this decision, the council would either be exposed to higher spot purchase costs or risk the depletion of grant funding, or face the potential closure of the accommodation, displacing 26 vulnerable individuals. So that's the reason why it was taken. So this is just a note, unless anybody's got any questions or that they wanted to raise about it.
We will note that and move on. I'll let you again, Simon. Update to officer delegated powers.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. So this is a little bit more in depth. This report, well, actually, yes. Sorry. There's going to be a slight change to the recommendation, which I'll go through in a minute. But Kelly's very kindly shared the change on the screen, which we can talk about in a second. But so this report seeks approval to update the council's constitution, specifically Annex 2 to Part 3 of the Constitution, which is where officer delegations are set out, and also separately the financial procedure rules, which is in Part 4. So the former, so the Part 3, Annex 2 to Part 3, is to reflect the council's new status as a local authority registered provider of social housing. Although some existing housing and property powers already exist in delegated powers in the Constitution, they do not adequately or explicitly cover the council's new landlord responsibilities. So the proposed amendments therefore introduce a clear and comprehensive delegation of powers to the head of PMO, environmental health and housing, to enable lawful, efficient discharge of those functions, including the ability to sub-delegate to appropriate officers. This is necessary to meet regulatory expectations, ensure clarity of accountability, and avoid delays or uncertainty in decision making. And key strategic decisions and major financial commitments will remain reserved to councillors. In addition, this report recommends a separate, unrelated update to increase the chief financial officer's delegated write-off limit from £1,500 to £2,500 to reflect in inflation. So while retaining member oversight through consultation with the leader. So therefore, the recommendations are for Governance Committee to recommend to full council to update the Constitution as set out at Appendix A and Appendix B attached to the report. So the slight change is that since the report was published, in fact, only today, the council has received a recommendation from auditors of Devon Home Choice, which is the sort of part. So there's a partnership between multiple Devon councils dealing with allocation of housing via the Devon Home Choice. That it requires specific officer delegated powers to allow the council to take part in partnership meetings with other local housing authorities and other partners at the Devon Home Choice Partnership. So while the council has general powers, there are general delegated powers associated with Part 6 of the Housing Act 1996, in particular 5.40 of Annex 2 to Part 3 of the Constitution. These are arguably not sufficiently specific. Accordingly, it is recommended that additional wording is added to delegated powers of the head of PMO, environmental health and housing to account for this. The recommendation at 2.1 is therefore amended as I've put there. So sorry, it's a little bit wordy, but so the current wording is there, not in italics. So that's what it currently reads, which is a very general power under Part 6 and Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996, and powers to investigate allegations of illegal eviction and harassment and other private rented sector issues. But we're adding in, this shall include but not be limited to representing the council on partnership bodies, joint working arrangements and external decision-making forums relating to housing functions, including Devon Home Choice, and to take decisions on behalf of the council within approved policy and budgetary frameworks, and to agree, vary and implement arrangements, contributions and operational decisions arising from such partnerships, subject to the council's financial procedure rules and approved budgets. So that's the sort of additional part that I would recommend that we add in, just to ensure clarity there. So yeah, if you've got any questions, those are the recommendations.
Does that actually mean that properties you're going to rent out will get rented out through Dem Home Choice in every instance, or would you have control about who's going to rent those properties as a social provider?
Yes, as a social provider, obviously, yes, Strategy and Resources yesterday approved that we would use North Devon Homes as our managing agent to manage the properties on our behalf. The allocation to those properties will be done through Devon Homes Choice. So like they are at the moment through social housing, that's all done through Devon Homes Choice. So that's where the allocation process would happen. We have control of those properties. We will still own those properties. We will set the rents for those properties at social rent level, but the allocations will be done through the Devon Homes Choice. Hence the importance of being part of those partnership meetings.
Thank you.
How does the right to buy apply to us with these?
So obviously all registered providers will need to comply with the current right to buy legislation that's in place. That is changing in terms of those requirements, but we will need to comply with that. In terms of the properties that we have, the financial arrangements around those properties, because they also have attracted funding from Homes England, mean that the ability to actually be able to buy them through right to buy will be more constricted than they are under the current legislation that's in place. So it's not to say that they won't apply, they will still apply under right to buy, because you can't get away from that. The new legislation coming in, I think, is it right to acquire? I think something along those lines. But it means that as a registered provider, we would still have to comply with that. We can't get away from that. But because of the way the properties are funded, there will be more restrictions in place as to the market value of those properties and then the ability to be able to acquire them.
Is the discount set with the right to buy against housing associations? Because obviously what I'm thinking is there was a bit of a mistake, wasn't there, with people buying up council houses, that no more were acquired or built. And if this council is forced to sell them, you need to obviously be able to replace them. Otherwise it's to the detriment of the residents of North Devon.
We would have to comply with the legislation that's in place. So in terms of the right to buy legislation, the discounts that are in place, we can't get away from that, because we are running them as a registered provider, social housing. As I say, the fact the properties are funded through Homes England funding, and the calculation in terms of how that works out, the level of discount should be a lot around. The financial attraction to the person buying will be less attractive because of that. Even if it did fall through that, and obviously properties were sold through right to whatever the legislation will be, we would look to reinvest that anyway in future properties anyway. But that's still to be worked through. We need to look at the right to buy legislation. We will need to bring together a right to buy policy. That's still to come through the committee.
When you're valuing them as an asset, do you value them at the right to buy price or the market value? Because I guess we, as an authority, are not allowed to sell things below market value. So do we have to devalue them on our capital, whatever it is? Yeah, balance sheet.
They will be on there at market value, because we have to value out all of our assets based on the value at the moment. Obviously, we'll be holding the social rent, so there will be a valuation process in place, but that level still needs to be worked through.
How does your department cope with the fact that we would sell them at below the market rate?
How will which department?
Your accountancy department work, because obviously our budget sheet's saying that we've got these assets, but then the government can say, well, actually you've got to sell those assets off significantly below that, which that makes a dichotomy between the accounting and the actual value you'll get, which
They'd
only
be-
you would
They'd be
understand.
valued at the value for their use. So obviously they'll be valued at social rent usage. So that's the value that we'll be holding them in the balance sheet at.
Just, it was an accountancy like jitter, which doesn't seem to add up.
In terms of accountancy jitter.
Well, you can have them on the balance sheet at one, but you can be told to sell them at a lower price, which then means that if you say were leveraged against the full value and then you sell them below that, the council's leverage on any borrowing will just have a grey area in between the two numbers.
The value we will hold them in the balance sheet at will be the value for at the use of being held at any social rate. So if there are then right to buy calculations to be done and that value is then less than that, then the year-end accounting adjustment will take effect from that. Just like any other valuation, i.e. if we value a car park at £1 million and due to economic conditions that car park reduces by 50,000, there are accounting adjustments that reduce that value in the balance sheet, with corresponding accounting adjustments done to represent the right value. So you'll have loss in valuations that will go through, reduction in market value, reduction in value of what the asset's being held at. Similar then with any social housing, it will be held in the balance sheet at social housing market, at social housing value. If there are then any changes to that valuation, the accounting adjustment will take place for that as well, upwards or downwards.
I knew you'd have figured out.
It's still early days because obviously we have to put the right to buy policy through members, but the initial balance sheet value obviously is the value that we've constructed them at. Once they become social housing, then obviously they'll be in the balance sheet at social housing value because that's the use that we're using them for.
I feel like we're getting a bit away from the agenda point. So, Councillor Lane, you wanted to speak.
Can I just make a quick point? Is there a time period attached to, if somebody wants to, you were talking about, you know, a right to buy after they've moved in, before they can buy it? Because quite honestly, it's going to change anyway, because it's going to change in it.
The current legislation is changing, but yeah, even in the current legislation, there is a time period that you have to have prior to then having those right to buy requirements. So it's not immediate.
Yeah, so we haven't got to worry about it today.
No.
Thank you.
Hence why we need to take time to get the right to buy policy through and get the right legislation embedded within that.
Thank you.
Although that was a very important conversation, are there any more questions on the agenda item about the update to delegated powers? Simon, do you want to just give a quick update again, because I feel like we've lost focus, just of the recommendations? Or does Kelly want to? I'll put it back up on the screen or something. Yeah, just because I don't want everyone to not know what we're voting on.
So yes, so it's a recommendation to full council, because that because changing the constitution is a reserved power, but so this committee recommends to full council so it's the same 2.1.1 and 2.1.2 as it was originally, but with the additional wording that's been added there at 2.1.1. So that's what we're voting to.
Brilliant. Can I have a proposer for that? Councillor Howard Booth, can I have a seconder? Councillor Quinn, all those in favour? Thank you, Simon. Item 13, the draft annual government statement. So Adam, you want to take that, don't you?
Thank you, Chair. The annual governance statement formally records and publishes the arrangements that we have in place to ensure that our functions are carried out effectively based on the core principles of the governance framework. This aims to give the reassurance that our decisions are lawful, public money is safeguarded, and resources are used to their best potential. Our AGS review this year has been supported by 2 reports from the LGA peer review team, also from the work of our internal auditors that you've heard from this evening, whose overall annual assessment was that we have generally sound systems of governance and risk management in place. The external auditors, Bishop Fleming, will shortly be commencing their review of our financial statements for 25-26. Their findings will be added to this before it goes to full council for the formal sign-off. We have identified some potential areas for improvements, and these recommendations have been set out for you in Appendix A, your consideration. I'd appreciate your feedback and suggestions as part of approving the draft annual governance statement.
Any questions, comments, queries on this one?
I just want to say it's a really good document. It's very clear what you've put in there, and it's really good that you've gone to the detail of looking forwards at what we've got coming up, as well as looking back. Just one question: how did you determine that the arrangements were fit for purpose? Like, what sort of you mentioned the 2 assurances you've had about governance at the council. What work took place to assess how effective these arrangements are?
Yeah, okay. So the starting process for the review in itself is that all of our heads of service are asked to fill in an assurance statement questionnaire. There's a number of questions that they get asked. That's reviewed by our statutory officers. We also review the guidance and the guidelines, and there's been a new addendum that's come out, and that really sets out the core statements that need to be in this document. So again, we've undertaken that review. As we said, we have been supported by the peer review team. I'm guessing several of you will have been involved in that process, so you know that actually it was quite an intensive week where they came in, taken that review for us. So in that sense, it is we have had some good, robust assurances. We're also worked closely with the assurance partnership that we've heard from tonight. We're part of those reviews. Those reviews go through our senior management team in terms of that quality check to make sure that we're happy with the sort of service and reviews that they provided for us.
Brilliant, thank you.
Anything else on this? Well, we need to vote on this, so can I have a proposer?
Just got one question. I'm just reading through it here, and it says gifts and hospitality and declarations are audited every few years. Like, that doesn't really sound. Every 3 years, every 4 years? Wouldn't it be a better statement to, you know, I change my bed every few weeks? Is that it? This doesn't like.
We could firm up when it was last audited for you and put that in the file.
Yeah, that would just sound a bit better. Every few years, sounds like
Yes.
10 years, 20 years.
I think I was trying to make the point that they do get monitored and checked,
Yeah.
But you're right, it doesn't really add much, so I'll tighten up on that one.
That'd be great, thank you.
Pick a number.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anything else before I call the vote? Right, Councillor Howard Booth, seconder. Councillor Quinn, all those in favour? Item 14, the draft statement of accounts. That's the new one.
Can I just say something before we move on the annual governance statement? From a training point of view, this is one of your core governance documents. So it's worth keeping this in front of you at all meetings and actually referring back to it. It's very important. Sorry, next one.
John, the draft statement of accounts.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the annual governance statement you just approved, obviously will go to full council for rubber stamp. It sits alongside the statement of accounts, so the 2 documents do go hand in hand. Some councils actually embed them into one document. We have them as separate documents. Obviously, but they do complement each other, so it's important to bear that in mind when you're considering a draft statement of accounts. The items on your agenda, because as I alluded to earlier, when we were talking about the audit, the original plan was we were hoping to have a draft set of accounts for your consideration this evening. Unfortunately, we haven't got to that stage because we were still waiting on the annual report from Devon County Council. That was due at the beginning of May. It didn't actually turn up until the beginning of June. So that has meant that the final production of the accounts obviously couldn't be concluded for this agenda. The team are working on those. As I covered under the external audit item earlier, they will be prepared and signed off by the end of June. That is the statutory deadline. The unaudited statement accounts are signed off by myself as Chief Finance Officer by the 30th of June, so that the public inspection can commence on the 1st of July at the latest. We hope to actually sign them off before that. They will then come to your committee in September, in advance then of the auditor's findings report, and then you'll consider those on the same agenda. in advance and being signed off way before the final deadline. In terms of the headline figures, the detail will come forward in the Q4 performance report that will go to strategy and resources in July. But we are looking at a positive outturn, which will be a net revenue surplus. We've seen some significant gains in the business rates in the outturn of 25-26, most notably in the last quarter. There's been 2 or 3 areas where we've seen some growth in the business rates compared to where we were originally estimating at the beginning of the year. There's also been a couple of accounting adjustments around a reduced levy that we have to pay on that growth into the centre. Also additional gains through the Devon pool that we're currently a part of. So where business rates rose under the previous scheme that came out in 2013, 50% of that growth would have been paid back into central government. If you're part of a pool, you can pool those gains and then some of that gain will be distributed locally as well. So we are part of a Devon-wide pool. Up until 2026, that remained. It's all been reset for 26-27. As you'll remember when I presented the budget for you for 26-27, all of the business rates gains have been reset. This is looking at the last of those years in 25-26. And actually the gains through the pool have actually come around a bit higher than what we'd originally estimated as well. So that is a positive in terms of the outturn for the financial statements. In addition to that, there's also an accounting adjustment for appeals where we make provision within the accounts for people who may appeal against their rateable values. Every time there's a new listing, one of the old listings disappears and the 2017 listing then falls out for 25-26. So there's no longer a need to make provision against the 2017 listing. So that has actually yielded a benefit as well in the Q4 outturn. So the figures around those details will come forward in the Q4 performance report. But just to give you a headline that there will be some net budget surplus for consideration as part of the outturn. What we'll be proposing with that surplus is trying to mitigate some of the future year pressures on the revenue budget, because we've identified obviously future budget gaps for 27-28, 28-29 onwards. We obviously are moving into LGR and local government reorganisation, but we still need to set a detailed budget for 27-28. We still need to set a budget for 28-29 going into the new authority and make sure the authority is financially secure. One thing we're looking at with part of the surplus from last year, when the accounts and the statements come forward, we're proposing to put some of that money into some of the reserves that we currently contribute into as part of the budget. So every year we make a contribution into a technology reserve so that Sarah's team in ICT have significant infrastructure budget to be able to make sure that we're protected against cyber attacks, to make sure that we've got data backups, to make sure that we've got up-to-date laptops and the right security in place. So we put money into a technology reserve every year as part of the budget. If we can make contributions now to that reserve from some of last year's surplus, that means that the future contributions we can actually take away, and that helps us with setting the budget in the future years. Similarly, we put money into a repairs fund to help with our asset maintenance, and we put about £170,000 to £200,000 a year into a repairs fund. But if we can put some of last year's surplus into that reserve now, that negates the need to put money into those reserves over the next couple of financial years. So we're just looking at a couple of those options that might help us with last year's surplus to actually help bridge some of the budget gap in the future years. And the Q4 performance report and your draft statement of accounts will cover off that context. So it will be a really positive story for members. It will also be looking at putting money aside into a local government reorganisation reserve to help cover some of the upfront costs leading into the LGR process for April 2028. So what we'll be looking to do is reinvest some of that additional surplus into those reserves and negate the need to make contributions into those reserves at a later date. So that will come forward as part of your statement of accounts in September. As part of that process, you previously approved some accounting policy changes at your March meeting, and that was around valuations of assets and indexation. So you've already approved those accounting policies. So they will now be embedded into the draft accounts. The team will finalise the presentation of those statements and the disclosure notes, and they'll be signed off, as I said, by the end of June. The audit of those statements will take place through July and August, and then you should receive your audit findings report in September's meeting alongside the draft statement of accounts for your consideration. You will hopefully then approve those and they'll go on to full council for ratification at the end of September. So Chair, that's the update on the draft statement of accounts. I'm happy to take any questions if members have any.
Yeah, Councillor Holbrook.
Do dismiss this if this is irrelevant, but I'm very interested in the rise in business rates, and I wondered if you know what areas of business the growth is coming from.
It's a bit of a mixture really. So as I alluded to, there's sort of about 3 or 4 areas where we've seen some adjustments to the amount of business rates we've had. In terms of the growth, one of the biggest area is some of the renewable energy schemes. So obviously PVs, and obviously we've seen you've only got to drive down the link road towards Bideford and you've got solar farms on both sides. That falls within the North Devon district boundary. In terms of business rates on those solar farms, we get to keep 100% of that growth of income. So whereas before, if we had growth in business rates from say a new supermarket coming in, 50% of that we got to keep and 50% of the growth went into either the pool or back to central government. With the renewable energy schemes, we get to keep 100% of that. So whereas a couple of years ago, we were getting renewable energy business rates of about 200,000 to 300,000. For the current financial year, that's now looking at around 700,000 to 800,000. So there's been quite a significant growth in the level of renewable energy business rates coming through. So it's good in terms of our climate reduction agenda and our environmental initiatives, but also benefits us financially as well from the business rates. So that's one area where we've seen some change in the business rates. The other area I alluded to was around the appeals provision. So when a new listing comes out, and there's just been a new listing now for 2026, where some businesses have seen changes in their rateable values, some have seen increases in their rateable values. So those businesses may think that that's too high and they've got an opportunity to appeal against those business rates. If they appeal and they're successful, that reduction will then obviously come through to us and we'll see a decline in income. So one of the accounting entries we do every year, we can make a provision for that. So we make an estimate as to think, well, okay, based on previous experience, when there's been a new list, what's been the average reduction in rateable value? And that might be 1% to 2% across the whole listing. And we will make a provision for that within the accounts to actually provide for it now to say, well, we think there'll be X number of people and businesses that might come forward for a reduction. We will make that provision and put that into the accounts as a cost. Then when the activity does happen and the valuation office makes some changes, we use that provision to mitigate that effect within that year. The 2017 listing, when we made a provision over the years, had about £900,000 of provision left in it. And the 2017 listing now disappears from 25-26. So that provision can now come out of the system. We will need to make a provision for 26 listing when that comes forwards this year. But because this is closing the 25-26 accounts, we can remove that provision from our accounts. So that 900,000 that was in there, 40% of that relates to our side of the business rates. So 40% of the 900,000 can now come out of the accounts. So that's why we've seen a bit of a swing in that last quarter because of that accounting adjustment. So there's 2 areas that obviously give quite considerable change. Alongside that, you've also got other rateable value changes where you'll see some new businesses coming in. We might see some new businesses into green lanes. That will bring about new business rates that will come to us as well.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? This is just an update. So
no, Chair.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, we'll know that, but then move on. So the audit recommendation tracker. So how do we talk about?
Yep. So item 15 is your normal audit recommendation tracker. That just sets out those high, medium and low risk activities in terms of those that are previous recommendations that are either due or overdue or not due. So the table in Appendix A sets out those high and medium risks. Pleased to report on there that there are no overdue audit recommendation risks. You have 1 high risk and 15 medium risks that are not due yet. So they're being worked on from the audit reports that have come forwards. A number of those audits took place through 25 and 26. So those recommendations have been worked on by the team and will come forwards and come off that list as we move forwards. Appendix B, which starts on page 191, just shows those audit recommendations that have been completed since the last committee. That's on pages 191 and 192. Page 193 then gives you Appendix C of any outstanding audit recommendations. And as I've alluded to in the first table, there are no outstanding audit recommendations for this committee on this report. So that's pleasing to report. And also on Appendix D, there are no overdue actions where members are being asked to approve any date extensions or any changes to the dates that were originally agreed. So, Chair, that's a positive report in terms of the current status of the audit recommendations. Appendix E, starting on page 197, just sets out those that were on last year's annual governance statement. So the equivalent of what Adam has just presented for 25-26. There would have been recommendations in the previous annual governance statement for 24-25. That starts on page 197. As you work your way through those, you can see that the majority of them are now 100% complete. There is one on page 198 that is 80% complete, but that recommendation isn't due until the 30th of June. So that is still being worked on by the team. So again, it's not overdue, and a significant amount of progress has been made on that one. The remaining ones from memory are all 100% complete. So that's the only one that has an outstanding recommendation. It's not due until the end of June. So, Chair, that concludes the audit recommendation tracker. Happy to take any questions from members.
Well, I'll go first because I'm the chair. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think it's the first meeting that I've been in that we haven't had any overdue audit recommendations. Do we think that we're going to get this last one that hasn't been completed done before the 30th of June?
Yes, just to come in on that one, Chair. I mean, actually, like I said, 80% has been done. The bit that's left is a sort of categorisation of our key contracts, whether we introduce a sort of gold, silver, bronze. As you know, we're just sort of going through that local government process now. One of the things we're doing is trying to share our data through templates. But one of those key templates is all around our contracts. So it's very likely actually that this categorisation will be done across Devon now, rather than North Devon coming up with our own process, which is slightly out of sync. So it's very likely that we will come back to say, actually, this what's left of this recommendation has actually been superseded, and we probably need to close it down and follow the approach for Devon, really. So that, if you like, we'll be in a better position because we're just formulating these templates now. So next time when you meet as a committee, I'll be able to give you an update and perhaps ask for that closure at that point, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, right. Councillor Howard Booth, one
Just
plus
wondering on page 189, the museum has a low risk and an overdue status of 6. Could you just explain what that means, please?
Yeah, so when that audit was carried out, there would have been 6 minor recommendations within that report. So the details of those don't get reported to you because obviously your role here as a governance committee is to make sure that we're dealing with those medium and high risks. However, there would have been some low risk and some opportunity recommendations within that report. So they are contained within the audit report. So the officers will be working through those, but they obviously have gone past their dates. We would need to obviously pick that up with the team to find out why they haven't been implemented on the times that they should have been. But they are low risk. So in terms of being on your radar, they're not really for your concern at this committee. But obviously, as a management team, we want to make sure that all recommendations are dealt with. So we will pick those up with the team and make sure that the minor recommendations have been adhered to.
It's, as I'm chair of the museum's advisory board, I've got a special interest in it.
We will take that back and make sure. And likewise with all of the low risk overdue ones, obviously it's probably not high on their radar to get them closed off, but it's important that we make sure that we've gone full circle and tied that up for your benefit.
Thanks very much.
May I thank Councillor Hayward Booth for picking up where I would have done if he hadn't done it himself. They need some time.
I'm just going to assume that crematorium high risk is what we discussed earlier.
Yes, so
Yeah.
there were four recommendations on the crematorium report, which you can see. One was the high risk, which was the review of the joint arrangement in place. That was the one I talked about earlier, where Simon and his counterpart at Torridge are now working through those draft changes. So we think that one should now be done and closed off. We just need to go full circle to get those adjustments approved. But you will see those at your September meeting.
Any other?
I was just going to say the other recommendations myself and Joe will be working on anyway, so they'll be closed off shortly as well.
Any other questions or comments? Well, because we haven't changed anything, that'll just be for a note. I've got a cheat sheet here. Cheat sheet. The ombudsman letter, item 16. So Sarah.
Sit somewhere else. I'm a bit conscious that I'm not in anyone's eye line.
Run around the room.
Should I have a little run around?
Cross legs.
Should I go in there?
It's right in the middle, cross legs.
Sit in the middle. Like a little dance.
Let's bring some fun into our meetings.
Well, I try to, you know. Getting late, isn't it?
So we haven't brought fun.
You managed to make a count sound fun, John, and I have no idea how you do it.
It's got to be fun, otherwise I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, cool. So the first of the two reports this evening is the annual statement from the Ombudsman. I'll just go through some details of that. Just as a backdrop, these numbers relate to obviously the total number of complaints we have as a council. And the same period last year, we had 460. So a total of 460. And what the Ombudsman have reported on is that 21 complaints or complainants referred themselves to the local government ombudsman. Of those 21, they decided 6 went for them. 12 were assessed and closed, so that is they felt that there was no further action to be taken, and 3 were investigated. Of those 3, there was one where it was found no fault. That was a housing, and there were 2 which were upheld. The first one that was upheld was regarding our enforcement service, and that actually just related to the fact that our policy wasn't on the website, and that was rectified really quickly. The third one was regarding environmental health, and it was a neighbour noise complaint, and there were various errors that the Ombudsman pointed out in that case, and actually recommended we award £500 in compensation, which is on the next report as well. So yes, a total of 3 were investigated. There was no fault on one. The first one was the one about enforcement was merely a policy update. However, our environmental health one, that obviously had multiple faults, which and that resulted in compensation. Happy to answer any questions on that one.
You reported that same environmental health earlier in the year. I feel like we know about. Is it a chicken?
No, it's a different one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's fine.
It's often environmental health that these result in, just because there's such complicated cases, especially when it's neighbour disputes. So yeah, it just happens that it's environmental health.
Say obviously the letter, if members were looking at the main agenda, the letter actually has a supplementary document. So if you go back to the beginning of your agenda, then the ombudsman letter has your supplementary.
Yeah, pages 203 and 200 in
Can I just ask how much compensation been paid out for the 12 months period? Is it just one claim? Is it?
That would be something next.
That's the next report. Yeah, going on to that.
Sorry, Chairman, sorry.
Anything else?
You just noted.
Okay. Yeah, right, we can note. So compensation payments made under delegated powers. I don't know if Simon or Sarah's doing that one.
So yeah, so again, this is an annual report. And this shows the total amount of compensation paid over the past 12 months via our feedback service. So that is by complaints. We had a total of £1,444 compensated. That does include that £500 I just mentioned as well. That's part of the LGO, and that was a total of 27 customers. Of those 27, 22 were extensions of garden permits for missed collections. I'll just stress those 22 customers are on the backdrop of about 17,000 permits that we have. So it's a really low number in comparison to how many people we have actual permits with. Just running through the others, there was one for revenues and benefits. It was regarding post going to an old address. There wasn't a data breach, but it did cause some upset. So that was why on that occasion there was some compensation paid. There was one regarding waste and recycling about not returning containers back to their original position. When we would award, I mean, that was for £20. When we award that would be repeated. That would be repeated, putting them back in the wrong place. It wouldn't just be for one. It would be over a period of time. So that's why the team felt that was necessary. When you mentioned about the environmental health one, the LGO decision, which was the £500. We had one customer who had repeated misassisted recycling. And again, that would have been persistent repeated, which otherwise, again, we wouldn't normally do compensation for that. And then the final one was regarding some procedures not followed within economic development. Again, it was quite a complicated case with regard to that complaint, and that actually resulted in us just waiving the fee. But again, it classes as a compensation. So as I said, that's a total of 1,444, and that compares to last year of 1,041. So pretty much on a par as the previous year. Did you answer any questions?
I just wanted to ask John, how much was budgeted for these fees in the annual accounts?
We don't set a specific budget for compensation because obviously we start the year with an aspiration that hopefully we won't be paying out any compensation, but obviously, yeah, small number of incidents do happen. It's not a material amount, so we just meet that within the existing budget. So there's always variances within the budget where we have saved money or had additional income in, so the compensation is just met out of that budgetary framework.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. It's not an overly large amount.
I would say that's good considering the amount of trade and service we do over a 12-month period. I think the service is very good actually.
Yeah, I mean, so we had 460 stage ones. Of those, 69 went to stage 2. So that's obviously they weren't happy after the stage 1, so went to stage 2. And then obviously that then resulted in about 20 going to the ombudsman, but only 3 they actually even bothered. Well, not bothered. Only 3 they found valid for investigation. So hopefully that is it shows a reasonable record for us. Yeah.
Did any of those complaints may result in change in the council?
Yeah, so all of our complaints, not even the not just the LGO ones, but all of our complaints where it's found that actually it's a fault, whether it's a staffing training issue, whether it's a procedural issue, all of that is now monitored after the event, and services are asked to update where they've changed their processes. So yeah, that's been a recent in the last couple of years to hopefully reduce those same things happening again. Yeah.
It's similar line with that. All of them, these figures show that yeah, it's a tiny bit. First stage complaints and go through a process was with this is 27 compensation payouts as Last year was 14, that's half.
Yeah.
Not half, sorry, but that's
So-
quite a few less.
So I'd say that there are differences of those. There are difference between the 13 difference. All of those are the garden waste
Right.
customers. So last year.
That's went wrong and it's been looked at or being.
Yeah, well, the thing is with garden waste, obviously it's a paid for service.
Yeah, it's
And-
on the green bin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so bearing in mind it's a fortnightly service, we collect 17,000 every fortnight. You add that up, 22 over the year.
Last year, has there been an increase in that first stage of complaints or not?
I don't have that in front of me, but from what the team said, it's quite steady. We have had an increase in stage twos. The reason for that is the ombudsman have changed their code, and that they've reduced the timelines now to actually respond to complaints. So previously we had much longer. Now it's a shortened time frame, and I think, if I'm honest, we've discussed this, and I think part of that is because people are still cross when they receive their stage one response, and so then they escalate to a stage two. So there's probably lots of different reasons. We're finding a lot more complicated complaints. We know of a certain that people's tolerances after COVID are much less than what they used to be. So things that people would just brush off, they are now complaining about. So it's a myriad of reasons. But stage ones are pretty steady, but we have seen an increase, not just in the number of stage twos, but the complexity of stage twos. A lot of that is AI. A lot of that is AI generated complaints. And they can be pages long.
It's good, it's a shorter time. I know this.
Oh, yes, yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
It's sorted. People get frustrated with the length of time things that are done by the council all the time. So I think it's good that it's shorter.
Am I correct in thinking that you actively signpost people to the stage 2 complaints?
Yeah.
So
we have to.
You must be pretty good with your customer services to drop from the 400 odd down to the 67.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're hiding behind something going, oh, if you can't find this little thing in the back end of a website, then you can make the stage 2. I think that's, you guys have got an unbelievably tough job dealing with people, because generally they're quite irate by the time they contact you.
Yeah.
And I think that you're obviously quelling some of the emotion in the majority of cases.
Yes. I mean, I would say so. I mean, as I said, it's hard. Obviously, resources are lower, people's expectations are higher. I mean, that's just going to continue. It's been the same for many years. And yeah, the team obviously do the best they can to sort of explain why something's happened. And I think the biggest thing most people want to know is that it just won't happen again. You know, and that then goes back to our remedial work we're doing following the complaint to hopefully reduce the number of times this does happen again. Yeah.
You mentioned AI generated complaints. How do you think that's like? Because obviously it's going to slow down your workflow. How much do you think that's affecting your?
It is affecting our work in the respect of it sometimes takes quite a while to work out what somebody's complaining about, because actually you can have 2 or 3 pages and it doesn't seem to relate to anything, and often people will say about legislation that doesn't apply because AI is said it does. But actually what we're doing to combat that is we're actually procuring some new software for feedback that is AI compliant, and so actually it's fighting AI with AI. So actually it will look at what has come in and it will actually simplify it, but then it will also categorize it for us as well. So I'm hoping the admin behind this will reduce because of that as well.
Surely the first point of contact is the customer itself, and person to person, because if you want to stop complaints, deal with it.
Oh yeah,
and people like to be talked to direct them.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. I mean, like obviously customer services take a couple of 100 phone calls a day, 250. We just had our first anniversary down the hub. That was actually today. And looking at the figures, we've seen over 14,000 people in the year that we've been open down in Barnstable Town Centre. So it shows that people do want to see people face to face. You know, they absolutely do. And so, yes, absolutely. Obviously, we're online, but we're also on the phone and we're on face to face as well. And people still every day now, we're still getting people coming in saying this is so fantastic, you've got this, because most councils don't have it anymore.
John, you want to comment?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Obviously, we've increased our face-to-face coverage. So obviously, when we were previously at Linton House, we weren't 5 days a week till 5. Now, obviously, we're in Green Lanes. So it has the hub open now every day of the week. So we're accessible. We're open. So face-to-face contact makes a big difference. I think also in terms of dealing with complaints, keep trying to say to staff, at least get back to the customer, even if you haven't got the answer.
Yeah.
Half the complaints that come in are because people get frustrated because they've heard nothing or they think they're being ignored. Whereas actually, even if we haven't got the answer there and then, at least if we're telling the customer we haven't forgotten you, we're still dealing with it. That hopefully goes to reducing that number of complaints. So instilling that within the staff, and the team are very good at getting that message out, not just within our customer services team, wider with the services as well.
Do we know how many of those 14,000 people parked in Green Lane's car park to increase the revenue? Because you might be able to offset some of the payouts against the additional parking that you're.
Honestly, we don't ask for proof of parking when they come in, unfortunately.
John will add it into the accounts, I'm sure. Yeah, I think you're on a revenue surplus.
We hope by having the presence in the shopping centre, it benefits the wider shopping centre because the footfall and if they park in that car park, great. If not, they park in one of the other car parks and use other facilities and businesses in the town centre. Then I would hope that they get a wider service than just ours, but benefits you.
I knew you'd tweak on for this, John.
Anything else? No, so we can, that's just to note, so we can move on, the work programme.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So again, this is your standard item, just to review the items coming to your next committee meeting. So Chair, we will have to note that the draft statement of accounts will need to come to your September meeting now. You'll also hear an update from the external auditors. And again, you get your normal reports, you can track that. It's just again to agree that one programme, Chair.
Yeah, and anyone else have any comments on the work programme before we?
I think you touched on earlier, but what's that informal review? Is that like what we did last year for that?
Yes, it is, yeah, and it may be now that we'll pick that up with the chair, whether we're covering that off with some of the bite-sized training and things like that, so we can pick up the best way to cover that off at our next meeting.
So the recommendation is that we move the draft statements of accounts from this meeting to our meeting on the 15th of September. So do I have a proposal for that? Councillor Bishop, seconded by Councillor Hayward Booth. All those in favour? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, that was. Yeah, well, Councillor Lovren. So the next one is the report to the corporate risk register.
Thank you. Again, what we do in part A of the agenda is just a note, from the corporate risk register. We'll then go into part B and have that full discussion, Chair.
Noted.
Just a note, Chair.
So I'll take that as read then, and then we will just note that. And then I'll get through the paper. We've now reached the point in this agenda where the committee will formally move into part B to consider the items which have been up consideration within the public domain. At this point, can any members of the public or press please leave the meeting for consideration of the remaining items on the agenda. Following the consideration of the final items, the meeting will be officially closed. I will now ask the clerk to please stop the recording. We'll be I think I did that a bit soon. We need to vote on that first. So can I have a proposer to go to part B?
May I propose that under section 100A/4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following item, as it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3, part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Act. I'm not going to read the rest. I got bored halfway through.
Give us a second then.
Okay, thank you, those. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Right, go on, right, sometimes.
Just procedurally